Yo, what's up, y'all? Episode 7 of I'm So Beastly Trivia. I'm Mr. Richard. Last episode, we ripped off a beautiful set of questions on RuneScape, the greatest game of all time, of course. Um, and this episode, uh, I thought about doing this a couple days ago, and I just think it's cool. I mean, some of these questions will be definitely complicated, some will be more basic, but this episode is on serial killers. Right. So first we need to jumble this up. Let's see. We have 8, 13, oopsie poopsie, and 21 questions on the spinner wheel to determine how many questions we will have this round. And it is going to be 8 questions on serial killers. Last round we did 21 questions. It was a long episode. Um, I'd rambled on about RuneScape for quite some time, which I mean, honestly, how could I not? It's freaking dope. Um, but this episode, we're gonna have 8 questions. We're still going to spin the wheel to determine how many points each question is. Um, if you get it right, it's worth that many points. If you get it wrong, take away that many points because, of course, there are consequences, and we must understand that, especially in a round about serial killers. All right. So some of these will be much more known serial killers, and others will be lesser known, you know. But that's where the cookie crumbles. So, question one is worth 34 points. All right, question one. Which serial killer was nicknamed the Killer Clown because he performed at children's parties as Pogo the Clown? All right. Which serial killer was nicknamed the Killer Clown because he performed at children's parties as Pogo the Clown? Well, this is interesting. Um, so, despite his dark secret, this is a fun fact. I do have some of those listed. Despite his dark secret, he was once a highly active member of his local community and was even photographed with First Lady Rosalind Carter, which was the wife of President Jimmy Carter. All right. Okay. Question one. The serial killer nicknamed the Killer Clown was John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy. All right. Not to be mistaken for John Wayne, the illustrious cowboy actor. All right, question two. Mm, uh, 13 points. Question two is worth 13 points. All right, question two. Which unidentified serial killer terrorized London's Whitechapel district in 1888? Which unidentified serial killer terrorized London's Whitechapel district in 1888? Very interesting that they never determined who this guy was. Okay. Um, but this is the fun fact. Case is credited with the beginning of modern era forensic science, as it was one of the first times police used criminal profiling. Interesting. And I have a criminal justice degree, so that is definitely interesting. And also, shout out to the thousands of listeners that tune in each episode. We thank you. We are grateful that you're here. Hope you keep coming back. But just a mid-round shout out. What's up? What's good? Pop, pop. All right. For 13 points, which unidentified serial killer terrorized London's Whitechapel district in 1888? That would be Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper, also mentioned in Vampire Diaries, as determined to be the younger brother. What his name is, I cannot think about it, but I can see his face. But yeah, they mentioned that he was Jack the Ripper, that this vampire was terrorizing the town. Honestly, pretty dope mention. Excellent show. but go watch it if you haven't. But yeah, so Jack the Ripper. Question three is worth 21 points. 21 points. Uh, okay, this one's interesting. This is crazy. Question three for 21 points. Which serial killer claimed he was taking orders from a neighbor's dog named Harvey? Which serial killer claimed he was taking orders from a neighbor's dog named Harvey? Weirdo. And the fun fact about this, he originally told police the dog was possessed by an ancient demon, but years later he admitted he made the story up. Hmm. I wonder how anyone could have believed that he was taking orders from the dog. He may have actually been taking orders from the dog, but the dog may not have been giving him orders. The mind can do crazy things, but if he's making the story up, that also makes a ton of sense. A ton of sense. Ah, lovely. All right, so this weirdo right here, um, very good at what he did though. This weirdo right here named, okay, the serial killer claimed he was taking orders from his neighbor's dog named Harvey, was the son of Sam or David Berkowitz. Son of Sam or David Berkowitz. Either one of those would have worked. All right, man, serial killers are so fascinating. I wrote a years ago. I wrote a screenplay about a serial killer. All right, question four is worth 89 points. But just a little aside right now, I wrote a serial killer screenplay years ago and never did anything with it. But now I started to try to transition it to a novel. The problem with that is writing the screenplay was easy because it didn't really add in any emotion. That's all added with the characters when they are doing the acting. You can direct them, but it's not in the writing. Um, so you can envision what the scene, you can envision how they should feel, but you don't actually have to experience it yourself. Transitioning to the novel, it should be easy because the skeleton is already there, but adding that emotional layer of it, considering it was also going to be in first person and be a psychological thriller to an extent, um, it's much more difficult to get into that headspace because if I'm doing a first person, I become that character when I'm writing, right? And so when I am that character, whether it's whoever's speaking or whoever's narrating or whoever is, the focus at that time, I embody that character. And to embody a first person serial killer, you have to get to a dark space. And it's just not a space that I want to get to. So that transition is much harder than I had initially anticipated. Um, but yeah, there's just something about the mental capacity of these serial killers. It's just it's different. It's fascinating because it's not an easy transition you can make to go from, regular day-to-day player to this sadistic killer. It's just if you can do that flip, I mean it's impressive. It's disgusting, but it's impressive. It's a fascinating thing to study. Psychology is a marvel in itself. All right, so question four is for 89 points. All right. Uh okay. All right. Question four for 89 points. Which serial killer was famous for sending cryptograms to newspapers? And this the serial killer, they sent multiple ciphers, um, and okay, yeah, they sent four ciphers, and only two of them have been solved in 50, 60 years, 55 years, something along those lines, something like that. Yeah, so he sent him in 69, right? So it's been 56 years and they've solved two of the four. So part of me thinks that either the other two just are not, because the other two just might be not crackable because they might have been fake, like not fakes, but you know, they just might have purposefully been uncrackable, unsolvable, right? Is this? Oh yes, this is four. Okay, for 89 points. All right, so which serial killer sent cryptograms to newspapers? That would be the Zodiac Killer. They still don't know who the Zodiac Killer is, right? They have ideas, they have theories, but they still have no clue who the actual Zodiac Killer is, which is fascinating. I mean, nowadays it's like serial killers still exist, but it's so much harder to be a serial killer nowadays. I'm not saying I would want to be one. Please do not take that at all. But with the advances in technology, the higher amounts of security about the streets and just around, it's much more difficult to be a serial killer nowadays than it used to be. Um, but also, it's just it takes it's excuse me, wow, it's disgusting mentally to be a serial killer, absolutely. But the intelligent level, you have to be so smart to be able to live a daily life and be a serial killer. So, from that perspective, from an intelligence perspective, I respect them absolutely. But from a moral perspective and an ethical perspective, I mean, awful, awful people. But wow, just it's such a fascinating concept indeed. But yes, the famous killer for sending cryptograms to newspapers is the Zodiac Killer. All right, question five. And this is it's an interesting topic. I'm going to probably ramble on a little bit. I mean, it's all right, this question five is for 1 point. Okay. All right, so this guy I'll probably give extra, maybe extra hints on. Um, so this killer was considered charismatic, and he did his dirty work in the Pacific Northwest, and he escaped from custody twice. Okay. Which killer was active in the 70s, known for targeting young women in the Pacific Northwest, escaped custody twice, and was known to be charismatic. Um, and this interesting fun fact, he actually served as his own legal counsel during his trial using his background as a law student. Not going to say that it worked because he did end up getting the death penalty and was later killed by electric chair, I believe. All right. So this charismatic killer, active in the 70s, known for targeting young women in the Pacific Northwest, and escaped from custody. That would be Ted Bundy. If I'm not mistaken, and I might be, but if I'm not mistaken, Ted Bundy also ripped through Florida State University, I believe. Yes, I think so. I believe so. I believe it was Ted Bundy, but movie that was made recently about Ted Bundy starred Zac Efron. I never saw it. I've seen a documentary about Ted Bundy. Actually, did I? I don't know. I think I saw it. I don't know. Just remember seeing Ted Bundy escaping out of the like prison lockup library or something into the woods and staying out there for a couple days before being captured. I don't know if it had documentary footage or real footage. I'm not real sure, but interesting guy nonetheless. All right, question six. All right, also for 1 point. Let's find a good one here. Let's find a good one. Okay, how about this? Question six. The film The Silence of the Lambs features the character Hannibal Lecter, who was the real-life doctor that inspired his refined personality. Terrifying to think that doctors can do this. I mean, they're supposed to be this trusted profession, this trusted position, and then they just go end up and killing you and create one of the creepiest cinematic characters of all time. Um, I've never seen Silence of the Lambs, but from what I've heard, it's very unsettling. All right, the film The Silence of the Lambs features the character Hannibal Lecter, who is the real-life doctor that inspired his refined personality. That would be Dr. Alfredo Bali Trevino. So, worth doing more research on him. I've never heard of him. I've, of course, heard of Hannibal Lecter, as I'm sure we all have. Um, but Dr. Alfredo Bali Trevino is the real-life inspiration for Hannibal Lecter. Uh, And fun fact about this, the author Thomas Harris actually met him in a Mexican prison while he was working as a journalist. So he did have legitimate inspiration to the actual killer doctor himself. Man, people are crazy. People are crazy. Oh yeah, we got a banger right here. 233 points. Yes, question seven is worth 233 points. Okay, here's an interesting one. This one I can't believe that this is even a thing, right? Um, so question seven for 233 points. The Axeman of New Orleans famously stated he would spare any house where what type of music was playing. Right? The Axeman of New Orleans famously stated he would spare any house where what type of music was playing. So basically, if they weren't playing any music, he'd go ravage you. If you were playing a different type of music, he'd go ravage you. But if you were playing this style of music, he would let you free and just be chilling. All right. And perhaps this is actually how perhaps this is actually how New Orleans got synonymous with this type of music. All right, so question seven, the Axeman of New Orleans famously stated he would spare any house where what type of music was playing. That'd be jazz. Jazz. So in 1919, fun fact, on March 19th, a lot of 19s, the entire city of New Orleans was filled with the sound of jazz bands to ward off the killer. All right. And question eight. Question eight is going to be worth 55 points. 55 points. In episode six, I said I would keep a running tally of points. I, in fact, did not. So we'll try to move that on and hopefully we'll do that moving forward. Um, but we'll see. All right, question eight for 55 points. What was the name of the acid bath murderer who believed that if there was no body, there could be no murder charge? Right? What was the name of the acid bath murderer who believed that if there was no body, there could be no murder charge? I mean, he's not necessarily wrong. I mean, if there's no DNA evidence, then how could they bring it back to you? If there's no body, then I guess there could be no murder charge because they can't necessarily say they were murdered if they can't find them. Um, however, in this case, he was wrong. Because, fun fact, forensics experts found dentures and gallstones that survived the acid, proving the victim's identity. All right, so the question number 8, what was the name of the acid bath murderer who believed that if there was no body, there could be no murder charge? And excuse me if I mispronounce this last name, it would be John George Haif, Haigh. So John George Haif or High or Haif, right? Something along those lines. All right. But that has been our 8 questions on serial killer trivia. Okay. Tally up your scores, subtract the points you got wrong. All right. Dilly dally, bada bing, bada boom. You know, talk junk to the people who got less points than you, or don't if you're, not that type of fella or fellow, guy, gal, whatever. Um, all right. Beneath, I will put the link to my email. So if you want to contact me, um, by all means do so. I would love to hear your thoughts on potentially new episodes. If you like my style, my voice, my pizzazz, how I'm doing. Um, I would just love to hear from you. Anything you have to say, I would love to hear from you. Thank you for listening. There will be a link to my both the books that I've written. And also, if you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link to that down low. If not, no worries. We still love you. Thank you to the thousands of listeners that I have that tune in every single episode and keep us going and feeling fresh, free and froggy fresh. Yeah, episode 7, episode 8 should also be posted shortly because I feel like we just need another episode today. So we're gonna do another episode today because why not? Trivia is dope fresh. All right, I am Mr. Richard. This is I'm So Beastly Trivia, and catch you next time. Ta ta, kittens.